All right, let's talk about learning objectives. And really, I want to talk about learning objectives on two fronts. Number one, just in general, what does a good learning objective look like and how can we support that? Number two, how do learning objectives and writing good ones apply to our specific situation we have now when we're dealing with synchronous and asynchronous and remote and in-person learning so that we can write a good objective that leads us in a direction where we can be successful on all those fronts. So first of all, good learning objectives in general. In the written portion of this, I included a document that helps me out a lot, that I think is really valuable when it comes to guidance on writing good learning objectives and making sure that you use those verbs and that they're measurable and all of those things. I'm betting you already know how to write good learning objectives. That would be a good thing for you to review. I'm going to give you a personal bias that I have about learning objectives. I know when I went through my undergrad and we learned about learning objectives, it was always, the learner will or the learner will be able to. And that's how the learning objectives started. I'm a big fan of writing learning objectives from the perspective of the student, starting with the words I can. So that it's not you saying the learner will be able to and then describing whatever you want them to exhibit, but the student is saying I can do whatever this is. It just changes the perspective just a little bit. It tweaks it in a really cool way. And I'll give you an example. All right. This is real world from something that Crete Public Schools is working on in general. In our surveys that we put out about how things went and how we want things to go, we received a lot of good feedback on what we can do better with communication. So that's something Dr. McDowell and I have been working on. And one of the things that we wanted to have in place is we wanted it to be consistent, we wanted it to be accessible, we wanted it to be routine. So I've been working with Dr. McDowell on how can we post videos and podcasts and blogs that are part of our routine, that are easily accessible, that are consistent on message. So as I record this today, he and I were working on that, and I had a learning goal, and my learning goal was I wanted Dr. McDowell at the end to be able to say, I can record a video and write a blog and post that video and the audio and the blog on our social media and website so that people and our stakeholders can access that information. That was my I can statement. And when we left, I wanted Dr. McDowell to be able to say, I can record and post and do all that stuff. So that's what we've been working on today. It's really cool on your learning objectives if you write them from that student perspective of I can. Like I said, it just changes it a sweet little way that I think helps a lot. Now let's talk about learning objectives as they pertain to our challenges. My advice would be write your learning objective and the activities that you want your students to engage in to attain that learning objective from jump for remote asynchronous learners, so that whatever the learning objective is, whatever activities you want the students to engage in, I want you to write them first for a remote asynchronous learner, somebody that cannot be in person in your classroom, someone that cannot attend in real time virtually. Why? Here's what I think. I think if we design those activities and we write those objectives with that student in mind, it's easier for us to modify those activities for remote synchronous learners and for synchronous in-person learners. That when we take that activity, if that activity, that learning objective, takes care of a student who's not here and can't attend in real time, we can take that and modify them more easily for somebody that is attending synchronously but remotely, for somebody that is in our classroom. We can add and enhance the elements that we need more easily than if we go the other direction. I think if we just think about our conventional classroom and the activities we would have our students engage in and the learning objectives that we want and how we move towards those, if we start with in-person synchronous, there's just more obstacles because we start from a spot where we're used to. And nothing about what's going on is stuff that we're used to. And if we start from the spot where we're used to, then we put more obstacles in our way. It's like, okay, this is how I did it in class. How on earth do I make this happen for somebody that's watching through computer? And oh gosh, how do I make this happen for somebody that's watching on the computer, but they're not even watching in real time, or maybe they can't even watch. Don't start with what you would do in your classroom. There's great ideas there. There's great foundation there. But start in mind with your learning objective and the activities that move us towards that learning objective with a remote asynchronous learner in mind. And once you have that, build backwards. Build backwards to synchronous but remote. Build backwards to synchronous and in person. And I think that'll really set us up for success. All right, thanks.